Hello, I'm Jos Boersema from the Netherlands. This is about capitalism, so it's going to explain what the people who believe in capitalism, what they believe. So if you think later he is talking nonsense about his new system, then maybe you should wonder if you also think I talk nonsense when you're a capitalist and I explain your system to you. So, capitalists believe that all people should trade with each other and that in the mutual competition the best will survive and everybody will be very happy, and those who don't work, they are bad people. Those who end up enslaved, they have no initiative. Everybody always has the chance to make it if you only want to. It's only a matter of trying. It's a very simplistic ideology. You trade and there it stops. The whole ideology is contained in the word you trade. You work, well, not even if you work, you trade. If you are a stock market gambler, you don't work, but you trade. So it's very simple. It's a slogan-like ideology. Now, if you are in the Stone Age and you wander from river to river never knowing what's next, nobody owns land because you only travel through it. Nobody owns the herd. Nobody can own the herd. Nobody owns each other. Nobody owns the bushes, nobody owns anything but what they are carrying on the back, or maybe on a pulled sled. And if you then go into the wild and you shoot your deer, and you bring it home, you have worked, and you can trade, or you can feed your family, and you can trade with other people. So it works. If you buy a hide or a shot animal in exchange for maybe a bow or maybe food or maybe soup or maybe something, then you can take the hide or the wool and you can make clothes of them and you can sell them on for better value than the original shot animal you got from a good hunter. So you trade. You have something, you trade it. It's very simple. Just gets a little bit more doubtful perhaps if you steal something. You steal something from another tribe, then nobody would mind, would even think it was a great coup, and you can then trade it. Maybe have killed an enemy person and took his belt, took his shoes, took his sack with flints in it. Maybe you took some herbs, or you took it and it's in your hand, you can then trade it. So what's in your hand, you can then trade. You do never own the land as itself, you never own the herd, you never own other people, because you're always moving. So this simple ideology of trading what you have in your hand, it works. It also works for criminals, because if you kill your own brother and you take his coat and you go trade it, nobody knows. And that's a problem with it. Theft, but it's not usually accepted, so there's another complication in the system that you are not to take something from another, or at least the own tribe, the self tribe, by force or murder. So robbing and murder and outlawing robbing and murder and trade in mutual agreement, in peace. That is the system of what becomes capitalism now, what capitalism typically believe. So it has a root in something that works. Unfortunately, perhaps, or fortunately, we are no longer in the Stone Age, and since about 10,000 or 6,000 years ago, people own land because they make crops. So we enter now the problem of land. And what do the capitalists do? You trade it. What you have in your hand you can trade as long as you kill nobody or you thieve it from nobody. At least not from the own tribe. You can conquest land from another nation. That's all fine. They're an enemy, they must die. But you cannot take things by force from your own people. But other than that, everything is fine. As you have it, without robbing, you can trade it. And you deserve to trade it. So land entered about 10,000, 6,000 years ago into this amount of things that you could own and trade. And still today people trade land as if it is nothing more than a hide or a flintstone or a bow and arrow. They see no problem with it. Then there is a second item that entered into the trade logic, which is money. And at first the money was at small amounts. The money might have been in the form of rice or gold or silver. Some nations have traded in shells or rare feathers or hides. But in Europe it was often metals. And some people are clever, so they lend on interest. And they see something who is starving and they say, here you have money for a week to eat. They are starving, so they have no choices. And then they have to pay back double the amount, for example. They then can, for example, not pay it back. And then they have these loan shark type people in their neck who say, well, we now own you. You're now a slave, you must pay this back. And everybody stays back and says, hey, it was a trade. It was an agreed transfer of something in exchange for something else. It was money for money later. Everything is just fine. Everything is just fine. So then we have the concentration of money which enters the system because people are poor. Perhaps they are also poor because land is traded. And what do you do if you have a lot of land? You put your little slaves on it. Because after all, you bought the land. For example, say you have 10 times more land than other people because you have robbed and stealed but nobody can prove anything. Or maybe you were exceptionally greedy in your trades and cunning. Or you lived very prudent, so you could hoard a lot of your wealth over time to buy more land. And over time some people start to concentrate land ownership. Some people start to concentrate money ownership. And since everything is traded and as long as nobody's robbed or openly with a knife on their throat, and there is a title to the land which belongs to A, B or C, and it is more or less freely sold, then everything is just peachy. That's what the capitalists believe. Now, someone is born into this nation, and of course they have no land because the family had no land, because the landlords have all the land and have had it for centuries. Then you have people who have all the money, and people who have no money at all. So what are they going to do? They have no land, they have no wild nature even anymore to go hunt or go get some berries. And then the capitalists say, well, you know, these people are just lazy. What they should do is beg for the big landlord, beg to the big money owner, the banker, please, 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 can I be your slave? I will work myself to death. I will put my children in your service as soon as they are 4 years old, and we will become your pets. You can rule us, and if we get ever angry with you, then you can always organize a war and kill us all. Well, for the capitalists, that too is all just peachy fine, because after all, it is nothing but another nice, friendly trade. Unfortunately for the capitalists, if that is you, think we are no longer in the Stone Age. We can no longer go out and shoot a deer. We can no longer put our rice on the ground and harvest it. We can no longer grab a piece of fertile land because it is all taken. So at least if you are capitalists, try to accept that there is a problem. That capitalism concentrates wealth, that is perfectly understandable, because money gets concentrated, because if you have some money more than others, you can use that to make more money, for example through loans, for example through setting up businesses and drawing in slaves and pushing out honest business. You can initiate a new productive effort in which the people you've drawn into work for you are paid almost nothing. So you can make your goodies that cost much less than it would cost people who want to make an honest, fair living of their work. So you can push the good work out, you can get slavery going. That makes you even more rich. Then you push out even more good people. So through the money game, you get to the power, and through the land game, you can do the same. You own 1 acre. You play it prudent. You own 10. You start to bring in slaves. You own more land. So in the end, you own everything. These two ways to get to power and wealth are of course connected, because with a lot of money you can buy a lot of land, and with a lot of money, with a lot of land you can get a lot of money. So through the land game you can get into the lending game, and through the lending game and investment game you can get into the land ownership game. So these two things, land and money, you can concentrate wealth, which was not possible in the Stone Age. It's very important. You are wandering around in the land, you are here, you use the resources, you move on, nature recovers, another tribe comes in, you do not own the land, and trade system was probably already established way long time ago, before humanity began to own land for crop ownership. So you have an ancient system of trade which does work, which is very important, because competition does work. You have the freedom to trade, you outlaw thievery, you outlaw murder. It is beneficial, but there are problems with it, which came in later when people began farming. And there was another problem that came into it, and that was massive concentration of wealth through money. Because once you're settling down, you do not only have to own what you can carry, or what your brothers and sisters can carry with you. If all that is what you can own, you don't own much. But if you have a castle, or if you have a big house, and you have a lot of land, then you build another home. There you put your weapons. You build another home. There you put your grain storage. You put another home. You put your horses in another home. The bigger the better. The bigger the better, the more powerful. So it builds and builds and becomes castles and becomes fortified cities which stream out into the countryside and take in the wealth from the countryside. It becomes nations, it becomes empires which rob people far and wide, even across thousands of miles. So once you settle down, you don't own, you not only, your wealth is not cut at a certain point by what you can carry. You can almost go on unlimited. Imagine that you say to a wealthy man, fine, and now we're going to normalize your wealth, take everything you can carry, walk 10 miles, and what you have there, that's yours, and the rest, you lose it. Say you do that. How much would he lose? That amount of wealth concentration in that single person is the threat or the danger that comes into the human society once it becomes a farming or settled people. Very simple, very understandable, I would think. Does not mean that trade is not good. Trade is good. If you make something as a farmer and you make a crop which you work hard on, then you have every right to trade it for hides or for sauce or for herbs or for hunted meat or anything. But there are these two problems which were introduced into society when we became a farming people. That is land and that is money. That is also wealth concentration beyond anything possible in the Stone Age. But it doesn't mean that you couldn't be wealthy in the Stone Age. In principle, you could own 10,000 bows or you could own an enormous pile of hides, but you couldn't carry it, so it was worthless. You had to leave it behind. So it's not that the Stone Age was an age where the wandering Stone Age, the early Stone Age, where wealth was just not possible. It was possible, but you couldn't concentrate it. So, that is what the capitalists believe, and also what the problem is with it. And if you don't want to admit it, okay, see it. There's also a fundamental issue with land, and it's more subtle for money, but it's more obvious for land, and that is land is already there. The place is already there. Nobody has made the land. But if you have a deer somewhere goes deer over the past the stream, another deer, somebody shoots the deer, you cannot sell a deer that is walking by because nobody owns it. You cannot give it to someone to cook it. But if you shoot the deer, you have done an amount of work. You've chased it, you have practiced on your shooting skills or trapping skills. You have brought it back home. So the work you do, and it's an old theory, it's nothing new, the work you do creates a value that you trade. Okay? But now we're going to trade fertile land, land itself. The land was already there. So it is not something that anyone is making. There may be minor adjustments to it, but the value of land is almost infinite because it constantly regenerates itself. Deer you shoot and eat does not regenerate itself, and a hide you wear does not regenerate itself, and a flint you use does not regenerate itself. So, but the land does regenerate itself. So there's a couple of things with land. It regenerates itself, and it is of almost unlimited, if not unlimited value. and it is just a raw resource, because land as such has no economic. You cannot enter land and leave it well fed. You have to enter it, you have to do something there, maybe you have to shoot a deer, that's an activity, or you have to farm cows, or you have to sow and reap, a process, or you have to, which is easier, drink. Sometimes drinking is very easy, which is usually reflected in that the cost of drinking water is not that much. Historically, especially, water was probably never sold, especially if there is a lot of water around it anyway. It all depends on how much work something costs. So there is something special about land, and that is a cause to also think about it differently than other things that are made and that work well in trade. But for the capitalists, you own it, you can trade it, all is fine. All is not fine. So I've now shown that trade is probably very old. It came from a time in which land and money was not owned and sold. And that the wild application of the trade logic, which I do not contest, in a time of using land ownership for crops and cattle rearing, etc., does logically and historically get out of hand. And secondly, that the use of money, which is the third commodity in which everything is traded. In a trade economy, it is logical to expect a money type commodity to come into being, because it makes bartering much easier through the third commodity that everybody uses for it. Maybe gold, maybe something that's easily divisible, easily storable, so that if you have a coat, you can first trade it into the money. Where am I? Into the money, and then the money can be traded into something else. So all trades now communicate through the third commodity, which is money, usually called money. And that can get concentrated very easily. So, for the capitalists, things are always very simple. There is no problem. If it gets out of hand, it will be called a crony capitalism, which is what it deteriorates into. Because if once the land gets concentrated into few hands and the money gets concentrated probably in the same hands, it all becomes one ruling class clique, one establishment of power, and they of course are always helping each other and trying to keep the poor poor and the rich rich. And when there is a revolutionary threat, there will be a war to destroy the people. So the system degenerates logically into a class-like society with a few on the top and many below. But the mistake that these capitalists make, or wild trade logic believers, is that they think that it is not endemic or systematic, coming out of their own system. They think that magically their system will keep everything balanced, as if you allow land trade, you can own any amount of land, you can own no land, you can trade for any price, you can trade money, you can trade all kinds of money type instruments, gambling gambling certificates, that magically it will all balance itself out, and the people who work hard will get a lot of money, and they will spend it. Well, they will not spend it. That's the problem. They will play games with it to make even more money. Even if you are a good capitalist who works hard, and who, if he gets a lot of money, he will spend it easily and keep money rolling through society, and buy a little land, not all the land, and does not try to put the brother down to get their land, or try to profit from someone who is sick and to make a serf out of them by demanding interest they can never pay. Even if you don't do that, what about the people who do that? Okay, what's your deal? What's your solution for them? Well, so I'm going to name a few solutions for this. If you think I talk nonsense now, that's fine, but then you think your own ideology is nonsense because this is your ideology. Okay, now you can switch and call me crazy, because now I will tell you my solutions for these problems. I'm going to very simple name them. I have a lot of solutions, but these are the main solutions for this problem. It's one, land would be distributed. Would be kept distributed. You're born in this nation. That means something. It means the nation is not an empire where everybody sloshes around and has no meaning to each other. In this system, you are a nation, and you are a nation together. So you're supposed to have solidarity with each other, help each other. And if you don't agree with that, fine, then stop watching the video. You are born, you get land. You don't want to use your land, fine. You still own the land. You don't want to know your land. You don't want to use your land. Fine. Then let the birds use it. Let some nature grow there. There will always be something interesting happening there. That's just fine. But if you own your land, you can go back to it. If you become impoverished, it will be quite difficult to make it reasonable that if you are completely impoverished, that you could not go back to your land, right? You own your land, and you can make use of it once you need to. That's one thing. You can create something for life on your land if you need to. Second is, by you owning it, someone else does not own it. And that's very important, because what do you do with these psychopaths, these people who always want to be richer than everybody else, and who do not stop wanting and working for that end until they have destroyed their own society. And even then they go on. These people are obsessive. So if you own your land, then the number of people who want to concentrate all land in their own hand, they cannot. Because, well, you don't care for your land, but they can't get it. It's your land. Okay? And now there are some people who say, yeah, but there is not enough land. There is, by definition, so much land for everybody as there are people and as there is land. And if you have grown too much over the last centuries, if you have grown too many people for the small place you inhabit as a people, then it's your own fault. Then you will have less land. Well, at least you will have something. Okay? If you are an abusive society, if you bring in slave labor from abroad to do the work, badly paid work, which if you had not allowed foreign people in to do that for an extremely low price, then those prices would have risen so there would be more fairness in the society, and fewer people, then that's your own fault. Then you're gonna pay for it by having fewer land. So what? At least you have something, even if all you have is 2 meters. Even for the most densely populated countries, you would still have a pretty decent garden, at least. And in the more less dense populated countries, you would have a pretty good amount of land. Well, that's one problem, or counter argument that's thrown around for effect mostly. And the other argument is the land is not of the same value, which is true. Some land is just sand, very infertile, or maybe you can grow a rattlesnake or 2 on it. But other land is highly fertile, close to water, kinds of good things. So that's more. The value of it is more. Well, think about it. Make a solution. My solution would personally be that the land is distributed according to its value. And now, if you allow people to swap land, so you have land, and someone else has land, and they must have land, but that doesn't mean that they cannot swap their land, because then they both continue to own land. This swapping can even be for money. Hey, I see you have land close to my village, and I have land a lot of miles away. How about you, and you don't use it often. I have to go to my land all the time, for example. How about we trade? And then close by, I like this. Okay, how about a week of wages? No. A month wages? No. And so on. So you can make a swap trade. Okay, you can make a swap trade. You're not selling the land, you're swapping the right around. Okay, understand? Very simple. And this swapping, if you allow this swapping in a nation, that can give a clue as to what is the value of various parts of the land. So this is sort of creates a market price of the land. And there's one way to get a clue about the value of land and how it will be generally thought of as a little bit fair, and it is probably not possible to make it 100% absolutely fair. But you can make a step toward it, and that's the best you can do. Better than nothing. And one thing that the people would have to do is, if you really get a bad deal, do complain, but if it is not that clear, well, maybe you should swallow it. Okay, and make the best of it. At least you got something. That's a solution for land. You give everybody land. You prevent people from concentrating land that way, and you give everybody a continual, real chance in the market to set up whatever they want, to make a small business, to even grow their own food, to put land swap it around so you have it together with people you like to work with and create something together, where the power over that company does not leave you because you own the land upon which it is. And your brother or sister also has land, so it sits on both the land, so you both have power over it. And that way you don't become slaves. Very simple, and it is offensive that academia people always pretend not to be able to come up with something as simple as this, because of course they can. Very simple idea. It's not my idea, although, well, I have my own version of it. I suggest you make your own version too. Then we have money. I would think it is dangerous to allow lending on profit in the markets, because it will be most profitable there where the businesses abuse labor the most. So the profitability of an investment comes from the success of a business, but also the costs in a business. And if your business is not that successful, if you abuse labor much with very low income, you can still make a very good profit. So investment goes to successful businesses, promising businesses, and that is a good aspect of it, but it also goes to abusive businesses. It goes to the cleaning company that sucks in the illegal people or the very low paid people, because that way they can afford the lowest prices. And if you allow that to go on too much, you risk that, because the money concentrates in the people who do this sort of evil investment, which they would then think is perfectly normal, perfectly good, then you risk that this type of class of people starts to dominate the economy, starts to take over the economy of the people, and that's not good. Then you have, that's the second solution, is then to not allow lending on profit. So you can lend to someone, but you're not taking a profit. And if there then is a lack of investment, you can put money together with other people. You can even use taxation money, and you can make small funds, startup funds, on collateral maybe, and get small businesses going. And well, if they want to expand, then maybe they should save. You have a slower moving economy. Although in principle, if you bring enough money into solidarity or investment funding, you can do anything in principle. So then there is the third idea, and that sort of goes back to the Stone Age, as they then did not have the ability to concentrate wealth, and that is just by law to deny people too much wealth, too much personal wealth. Well, now everybody gets on the hind legs and starts screaming, but then I would ask the question: would you like your nation? Would you like everything you own in your home, from your socks to your bicycle if you have one, everything is owned by one individual? So that you live in an absolute tyranny, which is probably worse than ever happened or rarely happened on Earth. Every last thing you have is owned by someone else. But if you say no to that, if that is too much tyranny for your taste, which is especially something that modern capitalists would not agree with, so much tyranny, because they believe in free initiative and dynamic markets, then you already implicitly have a maximum somewhere of what one person in your vision is allowed to own, right? You cannot own everything in a nation. You would not find it acceptable. So you already agree with a maximum on personal wealth. You just probably put it very, very, very high, and then maybe you should ask yourself, why? Why do you put it so high? Maybe the reason is that you want to be a rich parasite, right? You want to be very, very rich. You want to have all kinds of slaves working for you, and then you will be happy. Well, you will not be happy, but that's the sort of pipe dream that capitalistic type people usually have. Well, I think that's a wrong goal in life, and it's wrong for a nation to allow something like that, because it destroys a nation. And if you want to get very, very rich, it is usually only possible by abusing people, by hoarding land, and by playing abusive lending games. Usually also starts to involve eventually war making and crime. Because people are going to resist you, and then you have to fight them. So when is the wealth all the wealth in a nation? When is the wealth all the wealth in a nation? Okay, you don't find it acceptable because it's absolute tyranny. Okay, where is the wealth so much that you have to start abusing people to get so rich? Or where is the wealth until where you could still work if you were really good at some job, if you were really prudent, saving money for your children or whatever, if you're really top of the line of your trade, how rich can you become in that sense? And then there is another measure of wealth, which is at what point does someone's wealth become a threat to the national democracy, or then become so wealthy that you start to dominate even the collective decision making, the voting. If you own all the TV networks, and if you own all the radio stations with a few of your buddies, well, then you have a lot of power. Okay, so that's another measure. When is it tyranny? Where is it abusive, and where is it honestly possible to make so much money? And where is it becoming a threat to the national democracy, or if there is any, hopefully there is some democracy. And then there is another measure, and it is at what point of wealth concentration in one person, or a few person, or a class, does it become so much that there is no escaping their influence, that it's so dominating in the local market that there is no freedom outside of their thing. Okay, so you understand? If someone is not wealthy, then he's not going to have major influence on someone in another village. But if someone is very, very wealthy, then he owns so much land, he owns so much bakeries, he owns so much mills, or dominates the grain trade, the trade in ABCD, all kinds of things, that if you want to set up something new which is maybe different, or maybe it's your thing, then you come immediately into sort of a war against these excessively wealthy trading people. So that's another measure of wealth. When does someone become so dominating, locally or nationally, imperially even, global, that they start to deny free initiative? So, and of course then there's also a low end. If you disallow people to own a little bit more than another, why would they do the best? So you have to make a reasonable, you could make a reasonable cutoff point somewhere, which is not too low, that people are just in an economic harness, and not too extremely wide, so that the wealth doesn't become a threat. So you go back to the old Stone Age principle that nobody can own everything by law. Personally, I had pegged it more or less randomly at 30 times the average in a nation. Which, if you think about it, it's like owning 30 homes in the street. I now got to stop because I'm at 3/4. Think it over.